I think that the people at the very top know quite clearly that they're on borrowed time. We're 1 or 2 moments away from a massive public disclosure, a massive public event that connects and sends a shockwave through the world.
Hey friends, Sean from SGT Report here. Before we begin this gripping interview, I want to let you know that the Q-Book drawing is over. It was automated and my webmaster did a great job, so thanks Eric. He sent me the names of the winners, and the winners were Amy H., Jerry E., and Linda G. Congrats to those winners of the new Q Revolution book by our friend Neon Revolt. Now, I sent those names on to Neon Revolt directly, and he will be mailing out those books to those winners. So again, congrats, and thanks to all of you who signed up for the giveaway. Stay tuned, because I promise you we'll be doing more giveaways in the very near future. We'll do book giveaways from authors that I know, and we'll also do an SGT Report 999 Fine Silver Round giveaway. I think we might give away 5 or 10 of those in the very near future. So in the meantime, I want to let you know that this video is brought to you in part by our friends at the Patriot Charger. After a crash, every second counts. That's why the Patriot Charger's 6-in-1 features are designed to help you in unexpected incidents on the road. It plugs directly into your cigarette lighter, and every time I get in my car, I use the USB port on the Patriot Charger to plug in my phone, which makes it an excellent power bank. By the way, that power bank works when you take the Patriot Charger with you on the go as well. The Patriot Charger has an emergency window breaker, an emergency seatbelt cutter, a flashing emergency beacon, an ultra bright LED flashlight. Of course, it has that USB port, and it's a 200 mAh power bank. So skip the Black Friday lines and get your Patriot Charger today. You can use promo code SGT20 to take 20% off while supplies last. I'll leave the link below this video. All right, guys, let's get started. I've got a really gripping interview I want to share with you here, and I'm not exactly sure where it's going to go, but I know it's going to go in very interesting directions, because my guest is John Paul Rice. He's the president of No Restrictions Entertainment, and he's the producer of the film A Child's Voice, which I've finally had the chance to watch. And even though it's an independent film, it's expertly directed. It's deeply, deeply disturbing. I'll warn you about that right off the bat. It's deeply disturbing. And the acting is really very good, especially for an independent film. That's usually where it breaks down, is with the acting, and then the directing can be hackneyed. That's not what you get with this film, A Child's Voice. Let's welcome John Paul Rice now. How are you, John?
Hey, Sean, thanks so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. Thanks. We were having an interesting conversation before I hit record, and I had to stop you and say, look, I should just be recording all of this because you have so many interesting things to say. Hey, just to level set for people, you're currently in LA right now, and you just told me something very interesting about the industry. Do you want to just share that? I think it's an interesting insight about independent filmmakers and those on the side of truth.
Yeah, right now there's an environment going on in Hollywood, and I've taken some stock of this from veteran producers of 40 years who have done some of the largest blockbuster films in history and have made stars out of Stallone and Schwarzenegger, as well as people who have worked in television and film of a high level. And what we're finding is that Hollywood is more entrenched today than ever before. These people can't get phone calls returned from Netflix. They have an idea, story, something to pitch. They also have money attached, and they can't get any other funding. So what we're seeing out here, and what I'm seeing personally among my peers, is I have guys who were working on the lot of Sony 2 years ago with a first look deal and comic book and book properties abundant, setting them up all around town. And at 30 years old today, after working 8 years in the industry under some of the largest names, they are now Lyft drivers.
Wow. Well, that's interesting. And kind of what you told me here before we started rolling was that these people, Netflix, these people making the decisions, I'm sure it's true now with this new Apple TV enterprise and Amazon, is they're surrounding themselves with people just like themselves. I guess that explains why the Obamas get a $100 million deal from Netflix, and Shonda Rhimes, the mind behind Grey's Anatomy and Scandal, gets a blockbuster deal with Netflix. If you think like they do, you'll get to make films for people who want to watch the crap they produce, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I've experienced it on, with A Child's Voice, the whole journey, not to just make that movie, but to market and sell it. There's been three very distinct things that I noticed. Number one is, since the Me Too movement, I've reached out to several actors, even as that was going off in 2017, and said, and the children, don't forget about the children. And this was I would say, A minus or B plus actress that has been in some very prominent films. And if I mentioned her name and told you what movie she did, you'd immediately understand her character. This is a person I came to know through 2016 primary. And the level of betrayal, in my view, of the Hollywood acting community, understanding that you can't imagine what it's like to be in there, in the level of fear when your entire life has been built around a career in an industry and your livelihood is tied into it. That's kind of the human part that we sort of forget. And everybody is not conspiring to do evil things. However, in a situation, in a culture of fear where reputation is everything, in terms of whether or not you are going to help make money for the system, they remained silent on those children during that Me Too movement. And that was a very telling thing for me.
It's just interesting because the people on the left, especially people like Hillary Clinton, they'll always decry the children, the treatment of the children in cages at the borders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, trying to paint a picture that the right is evil and the right doesn't care about families and the right doesn't care about children and the right doesn't care about those living in poverty. And it's so much bigger than that because the people on the left conveniently omit truths like Laura Silsby trafficking children out of Haiti and being caught at the border with Bill and Hillary Clinton coming to her aid. How is it that they always selectively omit the painful truths like that, and they can forget about Pizzagate, and they can listen to CNN and call it a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory concocted by internet theorists?
This is how conspiracy theories are threaded together, lie by lie.
Right? Omitting the fact that Breitbart tweeted about John Podesta in 2011 that he's a world-class underage sex slave op cover-upper defending unspeakable dregs. Like, this has all come out now. These aren't conspiracy theories, these are facts. But facts are easily omitted by those who aren't intellectually honest. I honestly believe they sold their souls for this thing at this point.
I think that the people at the very top know quite clearly that they're on borrowed time. And we're 1 or 2 moments away from a massive public disclosure, a massive public event that connects and sends a shockwave through the world. And I want to lead into this by saying what we're living in right now is a product. My belief is it's a product of a child abuse system that has been run for hundreds of years, enabled by people who are pedophiles and worse as to what they do to children, running the show. And that doesn't mean that everybody in Wall Street, it doesn't mean everybody in Hollywood, it doesn't mean everybody in the industry. It's a hidden club, a hidden cult. I met with people from Disney years ago who told me that you go on the set and you can feel something's up, but you don't know who it is and you don't know what's going on. And they make sure that they do that out and away from the cast and the crew. So when we're talking about Hollywood, and this is not to give a pass on anybody, because everybody has to be accountable for themselves and what they believe, right? Ultimately, if your name is going to be dragged through the mud by somebody who's implicated in pedophilia of children, you're going to have to say what you knew. There is going to be a reckoning because your reputation is on the line, and there's not going to be an excuse to be made that you kept taking a check in spite of that fact, right? Let's go a little bit deeper. That anchor on ABC News who was caught in a hot mic, moment, her reflection upon the fact that she didn't get to tell the story, if you really go back and look at her face and her demeanor, she's not remorseful for the fact that victims were silenced essentially, and that Jeffrey Epstein for another 3 years was emboldened even more because of the cover-up. Because you gotta know that these people let him know that this information was coming in, just like they let people know that Ronan Farrow had dirt on Harvey Weinstein, and then they covered it up, and then finally got it published recently in the last couple of years. So This is why they can't implicate themselves, because what this lady has done, essentially, if you look at her, she's remorseful for the fact that her ego, in her standing in her career, she did not get to tell that story. Had nothing to do with the fact of the victims or the people who had been hurt by this man. As the lawyer had said, and as she had said on that moment, that we will come to learn that Jeffrey Epstein was one of the most prolific pedophiles in history. And at that day that she found out that they were killing the story, she should have demanded to know why and resigned if she was truly caring about that for which he had done to those girls and had enabled with all of the other people. Because the thing that they don't tell you is that somebody who's a pedophile does not have the same appetite as the next. So what we're going to get into, rightfully so, is the fact that we've had disclosure from WikiLeaks and the DNC emails to the Podesta emails to Pizzagate to now Me Too to Jeffrey Epstein. And here's the turning point. It's going to happen. It has to. It's one thing when you say an old guy and a 16-year-old girl had sex. Most people, if they're abhorrent to the idea, I would probably say more men likely than women. And I would just argue with you, what is the consumption of porn on the internet? Okay, let's start with that. So the idea that most people are abhorrent to the idea of pedophiles and child sex trafficking and rape, but they never talk about the violence. They never talk about those girls getting beaten. They never talk about the rape and the fantasies that these men enact on these children. What we're going to find out is when we get to the single-digit ages, you're going to see men and women in a thunderclap in this country draw a strong line of distinction that says, you do not get to serve anything in society when you violate the most helpless and defenseless of all of our species. Period. End of story. Doesn't matter how creative or talented or what kind of company you run. My God, there are other people that are just as talented, if not more brilliant, ready to step in and don't have this proclivity to want to F-U-C-K children.
Well, I'll tell you something. This is biblical in scope because, to paraphrase, better to be thrown into the ocean with a millstone tied around your neck than to hurt little ones, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what we're talking about here. And just to circle back, you were talking about Amy Robach over there at ABC.
Yeah.
And the point I want to make about that, first of all, shout out to Project Veritas for getting that important information out. Because what it shows us is that people above these journalists are controlling these narratives. The people who control ABC News prevented that story about Epstein from getting out. Meanwhile, we have the new FBI dump about the Finders CIA organization.
Conspiracy no more.
Right, which was trafficking children, torturing children, and in some cases, using satanic ritual abuse and murdering children. Now, in addition to that, as part of that document dump, we now know that there were actually tunnels at the McMartin preschool. So look that up, folks. They've told us that that whole thing was nonsense made up by kids because they never found tunnels. We now know they found tunnels. All of this is spilling out, and that's the good news. But this stuff runs so deep. Maybe we should just circle back to your movie briefly.
Mm-hmm.
Because look, you made a movie. I don't know how many people saw it. I don't know if you've made your money back yet, but I watched it. This is not a movie you watch really for entertainment's sake. I guess it's a movie you really watch to become informed about what's going on, because it's not a documentary. It's more of a fictional account. It's a movie. And in the movie, you have a character named Rudolph, played by Joseph Lopez. Is that right?
Yeah, Joseph.
That's what you told me. I asked you about Rudolph before we started. And it's deeply, deeply disturbing, right?
Yeah.
What's going on depicted in your film is very similar to what we're hearing now from the FBI doc dump about the Finders.
Yeah. We took, so the journey to make this film and kind of condense it in a way is the election of Donald Trump blew a hole into reality for me personally. And the kind of person that I am is I'm an analyst and a researcher, and I dive into stuff to learn it inside and out, whichever way I can. So I spent the entire summer of 2017 going through history, found JFK to 9/11, everything is a rich man's trick, learned about the Bushes, learned about, JFK's murder. Not that I didn't know these things already before, but I really needed to have a deeper understanding as to how we got to this point, both in our society and our politics and our economics. And I had the one thing that your folks who look me up online will know is I'm more than just a filmmaker. I also worked for a bank for 13 years in finance and in tech. And I worked with high net worth clientele, the stars, some of the biggest and wealthiest names. And while that experience, I met some of the best people in the world who I worked with, my coworkers, which is why I stayed as long as I did. But I have an understanding as to how complex these problems are and how interdependent different parts, both in the psychological and emotional places, that play a major part in both their system that they have set up and our conditioning. And it's like a world of two realities. So when I got into human trafficking, I ran into the Finders, I ran into the Franklin scandal. I watched both the documentary that had been put together with found footage, and my business partner read the book. Deeply, deeply disturbing. But then I started reading, Lucifer's Banker and The Devil's Chessboard and about Cheney, and I learned about Ross Perot, and I saw what happened in '92 to him, and he was one of the first, most courageous people in my mind to get up on a stage between two devils and call them both out.
Yeah, he agreed. He was Ron Paul before we knew about Ron Paul.
Yeah,
I mean, to the degree that he had the national political stage.
Right. And really what we forget sometimes is that 2016 was a pre-revolutionary year. The phenomena of Sanders and Trump defying all logic told you that. What is really troubling is that 2020 will have an effect as well, but it won't be the revolution in the sense of the one that Hillary Clinton would have wanted, which would be to destroy conservatives, having 4 years of the presidency to do that. And we could do a whole show on what are the possibilities of that. The fact of the matter is that people have been messaged 24/7 for 3 years and before that, but 24/7 having their fears stroked constantly. And our child abuse system that we live in has put all of this shit in their mind that when I learned what the subconscious mind does and how it works, you don't have a chance to avoid what is coming until we begin to heal ourselves, Sean. And this is what I found this year. Going into a child's voice in human trafficking and exploring that topic took me into a world of darkness that I had never even conceived exist. But it also brought me closer to the meaning of what I wanted to do with my life, which is to heal from my own abuse as a child, who was sexually abused as a child by my mother and father. And while that's horrific in itself, I'm here to tell people that you can heal from this trauma and we can heal each other. It takes effort, yes, but it takes courage, and ultimately it takes love. And that's what I found by making this movie. Even though it has some horrific ideas in it, we don't glorify and we don't make it so that you can't watch it. There's no gore in the film. It's the concepts and the ideas about networks. It's two people who are a homeless heroin addict, a girl who's being beaten by her boyfriend who's selling kids, and the child who is murdered and sacrificed, but whose spirit lives on, calling for help, calling for love. And it was the boy that answered it and gets sent on a journey to track down the girl, to protect her. And the two of them together go on a road to redemption through love, which is not necessarily of romance, but of one of strength in standing up to the horror in the face of it with your love, not out of malice or hatred or want to hurt the perpetrator, but to shine a light in this direction for truth. Because when we do that, when these monsters have light shown in their direction, they scatter, and all those who are living under fear around them come into the light, because they're not like this person. They're being controlled by them. They're being controlled and dominated by a system that it literally lives in their mind. Because our subconscious minds, this is the stuff we have to start learning about, Sean, if we're going to wake up. The subconscious mind has 10 laws that govern it, 3 of which are the most important to learn. Number 1 is this: the subconscious mind does not decide or make any decisions for you. The subconscious mind controls 90 to 95% of all of your thoughts you think every day. That means that the 60 to 70,000 thoughts and actions, both unaware and aware, are going off without any decisions being made. What does that mean? It means that the subconscious mind cannot determine what is real and what is actually imagined. So imagine a real fear, which is somebody who has a knife to your throat or a gun to your head. That's a real fear. And then not having that and having the same emotional response from something that you read, see, or happens to you, even though it's not a real threat. So when you introduce child abuse early on from a young age, and you hurt the child who is in a hypnotic state, this is Joe Dispenza's work. I want to share all of this with your audience. Joe Dispenza's work, along with Bruce Lipton, is now solid science. In fact, it's going to be one of the groundbreaking revelations that we're going to have about our understanding and our place and our importance in this world, about children, how valuable and how beautiful and how powerful children are. They're born from the light. All of us are born from the light. All life on this planet is born from the light. All of it. And you don't need a religious belief to understand this, because I'm going to give you very clear, concise points.
Well, let's do this before we go there, and I want you to go there, but I just want to say a couple of things.
Yeah.
When these people abuse children in the way that they do, the ones who survive have their minds fractured, right?
Yes, they do.
They're destroyed, and that's, I think, by design. And then these intelligence agencies use these assets, right, as pawns in their bigger game. And it's, believe me, folks, at the end of the day, once you do the research that John Paul Rice and I have done, you will conclude that it is a Luciferian agenda. That's what's going on here. And what I want to say about your movie, the title's great, A Child's Voice. The movie, disturbing to watch though it is, speaks to those children who were victimized by Jeffrey Epstein. It speaks to those children who were victimized by Jimmy Savile over the course of decades and covered up by the highest levels of the UK government, including the Royal Crown. The 16 children that may have been murdered by Sir Edward Heath and his associates. Your movie speaks for those children. They don't have a voice anymore. And it speaks for the kids that go missing every year around the world too. And I just want to say that at the end of the day, this is a spiritual battle. I want to give a shout out to a new Patreon I have. His name is Evan. He sent me a really remarkably nice message via Patreon. I want to read just part of it to you. He wrote, and this means a lot to me because, you know, I put these things out and I pray to God that it's making a good impact on the world and on people, but you don't really know. It's not quantifiable. It's not really tangible. And Evan wrote, quote, this is just part of what he wrote. You have had a profoundly positive impact on my life, especially your video, God is Real. And here's the proof. I was atheist at the time that video was published, and the video got me to start questioning evolution. Thanks for helping me to realize that there is a God. And then he goes on to say many other nice things. And that means so much to me because I think that is one of the most important interviews I've ever done with my friend James Perloff. The elite don't want you to know God is real. They don't want you to know you're special. They don't want you to know you're a creation of the divine. They don't want you to know that you have power in the name of Jesus Christ. They worship a dark power.
Yes.
And now they want you to know that. They're very vocal about that. It's coming out in their movies, their TV shows. I know at the end of this conversation, you want to bridge to the Joker movie and segue out with that. I haven't seen it, so you share what you want about that. But they want children to grow up not believing there's a God, believing this is all a big accident, right? We're here by accident by way of a big bang.
And we're just this little tiny speck in this big, vast universe.
And we're the result of evolution. So be nihilistic, be satanic, and do as thou wilt. That is the whole of the law, according to these people. And it's absolutely an anti-human, antichrist agenda.
Yeah, I don't doubt any of that, because in the final analysis, whether the sum total of all believe or not doesn't matter. It's the structure that's been created for us. And it really speaks to the material world, Sean. This spiritual battle is beyond Christ, because and when I say that, I don't mean it from some esoteric faraway place. I mean, it's in you. Christ is in you. God is all of us. God is not outside. It's not far away. God is here. God has always been here. And the thing, and even I'm telling you, I've worked with, not worked with, but I've been working with Jay Parker, who's this SRA survivor. I've gotten to know Ronald Bernard through our movie, who watched it and praised it for the ending.
Oh, let me jump in. Ronald Bernard is the Dutch banker who blew the whistle on this satanic agenda. Can you talk about that real briefly?
Yeah.
He's the real deal. He's a real guy, right?
He's the real deal. He's a real guy. He wasn't killed, even though that was one of the rumors that was put, or somebody just saw it and put it out there. That was like 2 years ago. Ronald Bernard, you can check him out. He's doing videos. He's now doing series. He's writing a book about his life. He's in the middle of that right now. Ronald Bernard was, let me just say one thing about you, Sean. I listened to you from 2017 on. I probably saw you a couple of times. And again, I didn't understand the Christian angle to all of this, in terms of, I just saw it as your lens, your view. Not that I disagreed with it. It was just a point of view that was different, but I've come full circle to understand what all of this stuff is beginning to add up and mean and show. So getting back to Ronald Bernard is for those who don't know, the best video to watch of Ronald Bernard is his 30 to 33 minute testimony on the International Tribunal of Justice. Now, regardless of what you think of the International Tribunal of Justice, there's been a lot of controversy behind it. I'm talking about the content and what he's saying. What he was talking about is, he described his entire life as a child, growing up in a child abuse home, and this is all public, it's not private, where his father beat him to hurt his mother, because his mother loved her son. And it was the one thing that she loved more than anything else in her life, the first time she had truly fallen in love. So his father beat the crap out of him and did probably other horrific things. Then he went into a foster home for 2 years with priests who didn't use the Vaseline. And he hated all life. He hated life. How could he not? All that he had known in his life was this damage, was this horror. And this man described his descent, if you will, or ascension in the order, going from being a businessman to a criminal, to a high-level criminal. He was actually running the central banks. The banks came to him in order to do the shit that they wanted to do. So he had proven himself in stages, much like a business or a corporation, with results that they felt, this guy's got some talent here. Let's get him into the bigger stuff. Let's bring him into the currency wars. Let's bring him into the devaluation of dollars. And these men were all knowingly causing all of the shit that we see in the world today 20 years ago. Starting it 20 years ago. And it's a system. It's a child abuse system. It's a system that he says has been with us for thousands of years. And the bottom line that came to him was, he was making all this money. He was working with other career white-collar criminals like him. And there, of course, were other teams of guerrilla and all that. But the main thing, like terrorist funding, basically he was the first terrorist because he funded terrorism back in the 80s and 90s all over the world. And he talked about where the CEO of a company that they helped bankrupt went home and killed himself that day and had a wife and children left behind, and they would all have a good laugh at it. But what turned him was when he was brought up to the next level. They brought him into the church, their church. And at first it was all like kind of silly, naked women, all that, eyes wide shut stuff. But the moment that they offered for him to sacrifice a child, to kill a child, is when he broke down.
Maar er kwam een moment, toen werd ik dus uitgenodigd, daarom vertel ik dit ook, om mee te gaan doen aan offers in het buitenland. Dat was het breekpunt. Kinderen.
Oké. Dat werd je gevraagd.
Ja, ik kon het niet.
And he said one thing that I'll never forget. He said that criminals, most criminals, all criminals actually, will do all of their criminal acts and everything, but you do something to a child. This is why when pedophiles go to prison, they get killed or attacked, because all of those people who are criminals were abused as children. And you got to think about this now. You're talking about a guy who was involved in a system where he literally said, I hated all life on this planet and I was happy to destroy it. Happy. Took pleasure, gave him pleasure, made him feel like he was connected to something among his own kind. This wasn't a guy acting on his own. He had a whole team of people. He had a network of people. He had people that understood him for the first time.
But even for him, for Ronald Bernard, the line in the sand was sasacrificing a child. He wasn't going to do
as is
that.
for most of them. So the question is, who are the people? I mean, I just described Ronald Bernard, and he will describe it in detail in his, but he makes the case very clear. These people are another level not up above us, but another level of darkness that we cannot comprehend through our own minds, because no human being who aligns himself with life, let alone God or anything else, but just align yourself with life and having a heartfelt feeling, could even conceive of the monstrosity of these people.
Let me play a clip real quickly. For those who are still with us, who think that this can't possibly be true, I don't have it to play live here, but I know I've got it saved. I'm going to cut it in right here. It's the former bassist for the rock group Scorpions, who famously told TMZ he has been at parties where they get off sacrificing people. People will come to these parties and pay $100,000 to attend parties where human sacrifice takes place. Listen to this.
I went to one time. I've seen really bad.
Was it like a donkey show or?
No, actually, I think they actually kill people there and stuff. They pay like up to like 100,000 people to see people get
Executed?
I'm not kidding.
All right, John, I just wanted to share that with people because this is a plague globally. Evidently, those parties, I think the one he went to was in Germany. This stuff takes place all over the world. We have these famous murals that appeared in 2017 in Brussels of human sacrifice painted overnight on a wall. You can't make this stuff up. These people, as Q has told us, are sick. Hashtag pure evil. So that's what this conversation is about. And what I like, what you said prior to us hitting record, is that yes, there's a great awakening, and it's a political great awakening.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
That's the
but
first
there's
one.
a second great awakening happening here, and
That's-
it's spiritual in nature.
It's spiritual in nature, and I can say that it's, as far as I have watched happen and people that I've spoken to, and looking at Eckhart Tolle and Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton and people like Ronald Bernard, and Jay Parker said it best. He's a satanic ritual abuse survivor, a family of Illuminati. His story is just, he's an amazing human being. He's got 18 years worth of research on this stuff. Pick a video that he's done. He's got he said, John, the toothpaste is out of the tube and it ain't going back in. And that's the best thing that we can say about right now, because we are not going back. Look, I know that we could talk about, it's not happening. It is happening. It is not happening. I'm saying, Sean, you and I are having a conversation right now that would not have existed 3 years ago. We're having a conversation right now as we're watching things happen all over the world. And the reality is this: is anybody able to walk back at this point the disclosures that we've had over the last couple of years? You can't. You can try. You can say, well, he got arrested, but nothing's going to happen to the perpetrators. Well, that's not true. Because here's my point: whether you support Trump or not, it's to his best interest to do this, because for certain these people will make sure, according to, if she had won, he would have been arrested. In the court of public opinion, he would have been tried as a Russian stooge, puppet, asset, and then all of these. And I've heard this multiple times, and I've heard it from one firsthand source of a guy who actually lived through this, which is, and I can tell you, I've looked at too many documents to say Donald Trump announced Make America Great Again legally in 2012. That was set up to go raise funds. I've seen the documents online. You can't just go and Google it, but I'll send the link so that anybody who wants to see it, his signature's on it. His signature is on one of the registrations and certificates. They knew he was going to run. They all knew he was going to run. And this surveillance thing, because see, Sean, we're watching it play out like a movie down here, but all of these people are looking at it at a high level. They know the revolution is at their doorstep. They know what they have to do. In their mind, they know what they have to do in order to be able to keep it down, to keep it suppressed. That's what they did with Obama. That's what they did with Ron Paul. That's what they did with Ross Perot. That's what they tried to do with Trump. And even to a degree, Bernie Sanders, although I'm not endorsing Bernie Sanders, nor am I saying that communism, socialism is the way to go. But my point being is this: they have a way that they want things to go. They have a way, and they've shown that to you repeatedly in the face of facts, in the face of all of this. And the question that we have to start answering to ourselves is this: the world outside right now has little to no meaning in our real day-to-day life, other than that we're an actor and a participant in it, and we consume it. But if we reverse the flow, Sean, and I will give you a perfect example of this, because I know our time is limited today, that Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself is a sign of the times. We should not, what I mean by that is this.
The meme, you're talking about that meme.
The meme, and now it's spreading organically to where on live television, MSNBC, with that young boy, they were there at the LSU Alabama game because Trump was going to be there, and then they tried to do a political angle on it. And the guy came out and said, she's like, why do you still support President Trump? And he said, one thing, and then he said, and oh, by the way, I'm supporting him because Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself.
I missed that.
You got to see it. It's wonderful.
The three of you told me that you voted for the president in 2016. You're supporters of his. Why do you like him so much, and what policies stand out to you that you support?
Well, I would say mainly just the no-nonsense policies, and especially since Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself.
It's a classic, because we also have a beer company out here in California now.
Oh, I saw that one. Yeah, right on the bottom of the beer can. Which beer company is that?
I don't know.
Wow, I wish we could give them a shout out. I'll have to buy that beer because truth outs. That's the key. And you're right. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. People are waking up. We've seen the men behind the curtain. And those men ought to be scared for their lives because they are dastardly, treasonous, horrible human beings. And I think they serve a dark power. And so as we round out this conversation, we can certainly go to the Joker movie. And I know I interrupted you about children being fractured through all this abuse, but I'm very, very passionate about this. And you hit on something I was going to ask you about, and it's Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
Had the witch won, their narrative and their plan would have been fast-tracked. And I don't think there would have been a chance in hell to stop it. And so we have been given a reprieve. I'm not saying that Donald Trump is a messiah by any stretch of the imagination. Right. I'm saying that perhaps there was some divine intervention here because their plan would have been fast-tracked, and their plan is 100% anti-human.
And it's verifiable if you just want to know, in opposition to Donald Trump right now, what they're doing with the media and the political parties, I mean, that's a counter move, but that would be an offensive move with her in the White House. So people like you and I, whether I declared myself a conservative or a liberal, doesn't matter, that we're speaking to truthful things, we would be a problem. We would not just be labeled online and attacked, but there would be a clampdown, because, Sean, if you're in a pre-revolutionary state in 2016 and Donald Trump's faction or coalition gets divided and fractured again, which is what they did with the Sanders coalition too. It's to divide and fracture and destroy it so that they can reform it in the way that they want, with the image that they want on it. And so what they would have done to all Americans is that anybody who didn't support the orthodoxy would have been deemed a right-winger. And anybody who laid honest criticisms, just as you do today, about what they do to our kids with transgender and drag kids. And I mean, it's so disgusting. It's so unnatural of humanity. Everything that these people do, I'll just tell you that the satanic part of what these people do is they reverse engineer the natural flow of the human mind and state. Let me give you one example. This is really important. 98% of all children born have a creative level intellect, genius level intellect of creativity. Okay? 98% of every child born into this world, as determined by a test that was administered to 1,600 kids by 2 scientists. This is in a TED Talk. You will blow your mind. By age 10, we've reduced it to less than 30% of the population. By age 15, less than 13% of the population. And between the age of 20 to 30, it goes less than 2% of the population, creative level genius, intellect. That is not because of age. That's because it's been educated the hell out of us.
Right.
We have convergent thinking, which is what you and I do and every adult does every day. Deduction, logic, reasoning, all of our lived experiences, yes, no, maybe, can't do, yes, can do. There's another part of the brain that is in another part of the brain, but it's equally important, and it's the part that they turned off in all of us. What is that? What is divergent thinking? Divergent thinking is you manifesting endless possibilities just like a child does. A child, when it's playing, is playing with toys, but they're lost in that world. That world is the child's reality. And the child is talking to those things. We can observe this in every aspect of a child's play that has nothing to do with the reality that you and I live in. They're literally in a different world and a state of mind, and they're in a hypnotic state of mind during the first 7 years, which means they're in delta and theta brainwave states, which means they're 100% programmable.
Well, and then we send them to public schools where we get Rockefeller Common Core garbage shoved down their throats, and they're taught not to be critical thinkers. They're taught to be regurgitators of useless information. These schools in this system is corrupt. We all know it. But the good news is there is a great awakening happening.
It is,
and
John.
there's 2 great awakenings, the second one being spiritual. And I know we're running out of time. We're down to our last 5 minutes. So I just want to give you the floor. Do you want to bridge into that Joker movie? I haven't seen it. I have a real hard time going to the theater and being depressed. Those aren't the types of movies I like anymore.
Well, I think that one thing I want to say is there is a reason why it's made over $900 million worldwide on a $55 million budget. And it was a fight to get this movie made, by the way. Now, I don't purport to be that it is one of the most brilliant and profound movies, although me personally, I think it has something in there that everybody should pay attention to. The only thing, Sean, is if I tell you what it is, it's going to ruin the ending, but it's the most important part of the whole movie.
All right, spoiler alert. So anybody who doesn't want to, I haven't seen the movie and I don't care, so you spilled the beans.
Okay. The Joker movie essentially takes all of the teachings of Alice Miller, Drama of the Gifted Child, For Your Own Good. Those are 2 books that are absolutely should be required reading of every child in school across this country. It documents clearly the rise of Hitler, because Hitler's genocidal mentality, the psychopathic mentality, was incubated in the fact that he had no outlet at all. His father beat the living crap out of him every single day, sometimes within an inch of his life. And he was in a 1-bedroom apartment in a poorest area of town, in a basement where he had his brothers and sisters and his mom there in one room. He had no escape, no outlet. His grandmother told him that his art was shit. So the point I'm making is this: when you're watching the Joker and you're looking at the motivations for the character, his discovery about the truth behind his childhood, the truth about his mother, the truth about who his father was. There is a truth, there are two truths in it and a half truth that's kind of covered up by it, but it's announced at the end if you get it. What you're seeing is a descent of a man's mind into the mind of mental illness brought about by child abuse. And that is the part where I hope to do the most damage in this structure that we're living in, to break the stigmas of mental health and say anybody who goes and kills another human being is mentally ill. It's not a mental health crisis to say that somebody who's schizophrenic, it's the proclivity to violence, the pleasure one takes in harming another. It's a big, big difference. Big. And it needs to be said over and over again to anybody who says, we can't talk about that, you're stigmatizing. No, you're not. You're distinguishing violent behavior from someone who's living inside of their trauma. They're living inside of their mind. They're not going out and taking malice and killing innocent human beings. So we completely obscure us looking at the cause and relationship between the mother and father, or the mother and that child, and what that child ends up doing. And it is complicated, Sean. It's not black and white. Every single one of us, 7.5 billion people on this planet, are living their own unique scripted movie. We are not labels. We are not simplistic, ideological constructs. This is all part of the material world, which takes you away from your humanity and your connection to soul. We already know that. We see that evidence. So here's my point. Joker, in its final scene, he's meeting with a woman after he's been caught. He's in a straitjacket, supposedly. And he's talking with the lady, and he has a reflection. She said, what is it that you're thinking about? Something along those lines. And he goes, and he thinks, and he pauses, and there's like a look of contentment and happiness with himself. And then he says, oh, you wouldn't understand. And the image that he's thinking of to the audience that she doesn't see is a Bruce Wayne, a young Bruce Wayne, a child Bruce Wayne, standing over his dead parents. Why is that important? Well, comic book wise, okay, yeah, but that is the true journey of a psychopath. Because a psychopath, what they always do, is they recreate their childhood in another innocent. He created Sean, he was told he was not an orphan, found out that he was an orphan, and then wanted to make sure that he hurt an innocent child to feel and experience the exact same pain that he went through. And he's pleased with it because he's corrupted another. When I've been out here in LA for 19 years, I've seen some pretty crazy stuff. And on my journey this year, I stopped into a strip club. And I met a girl who saw me from across the room. She immediately went over to me. And I learned that night what Satan does to people's minds. Child abuse is the portal to satanic worship. Because if you look at the bloodlines, that's exactly what they do to their children. They have cages, electronic cages, and they do mind control on their children. So it is the belief system from which these people come from that they truly believe is the way to live. And if we don't understand that, if we think that we're going to reason our way out of this, if we think that the violence that we're going to see occur when all of this goes off, whenever it does, when we have 20% of our population on antidepressant drugs, when we have all of this crap in people's heads who are literally acting out imagined fears, and their anger is coming out more and more, and they're having to feed it because it's ego driven. It's all negative. It's all been plugged into this material world that is designed to destroy the spirit of the human being. And what I'm asking your audience to do is this: educate yourself, use this time to heal yourself in ways that you have never done before. Take upon yourself all your skills that you have at your work and your job and turn them on yourself. You need to heal this body. You need to heal this mind, because all of us, no matter whether you've been through child abuse like I have or someone else who hasn't, we're in a child abuse program. So the bad programming of the parents that you had, unaware of that fact, went into you because they were told certain things at the time, which created certain counteractions in their children, for which they wanted to move everybody to a place where we descend into violence, where it's all emotion and no thought, no care, no love. That is the world that they are projecting onto all of us. And we need to say, that is enough. I'm going to the change is going to start with me and my body and my mind. Because here's the point. If Jesus Christ is inside of our hearts, if God is here with us, then we have all the power. The illusion of these people is to take that from you and say that you're less than. And only if you accept that and believe that this is your reality, that this is the only way that the world can be, that all of what they have done in their image, as far as that they can push it, they still haven't destroyed us all. And that should say something where we can springboard to a new future that has a new understanding, that values and protects the child before birth to 18. Not on an economic model, not where we tag them with a social security ID and we say, okay, now you're legal and now you're a taxpayer and now you're valuable to the system. If we don't start having these discussions and standing up and getting in front of the mainstream media, not out of hatred, but out of our love. This movement, the Great Awakening, Sean, is a heart-led, felt movement that's lived inside of you every single moment of every single day. There is no campaign, there's no political campaign, there is no slogan that can co-opt that movement, because it's lived inside of you. And when you do that, when you see that child out there that you know is being neglected, the ones that are in your family, someone who's hurting, a brother or sister who has written you off because you like Trump or don't agree with him politically, we need to get closer to each other, Sean. Because in that closeness, in that healing, I met kids this summer. I can't tell you how brave and courageous they are. This one boy whose brother was up in Lake Arrowhead, who had gone away missing because he was into drugs and alcohol. And his brother went up there because he loved him. He loved his brother and wanted to help him. And he said to me, and it was so beautiful, Sean, this is like a baby boy with all this trouble. He was a meth addict or a heroin addict himself. And he went up there to save his brother. And he said this to me, and I'll never forget this. He said, it helps me too. It helps me heal too. And that's the message. Heal yourself, you will heal others. You will be like Christ in the truth that you know from your own lived experiences when you've come through on the other side and you can see things so clearly. You see the lies. You don't have to be them anymore. You get rid of all of your contradictions, because the contradictions that we learn from birth to death are integrated into us. And then that means we also are integrating them into our society, into our families. So we have to reverse the flow of that from fear to love.
Well, I agree. You've said a lot there, and I think people need to digest it by thinking about those that are aligned against basically what we've just spoken about. If there is to be a violent revolution, it will come from those that have chosen the godless side.
Yes.
And I'm sorry to be that frank, but it's true. If you look at Antifa, if you look at what they are fighting for, literally causing violence about, they're communist and Marxist values. Those are godless values. Those marching in the streets wearing pink pussy hats are marching in the streets on behalf of the abortion of children, sometimes in the 9th month. That's a godless value.
I want to say one thing about that, and I agree with you, and it is, but this is my point in the bigger sense. Every single one of those people is unaware of the fact of what they're actually doing, because if they did know what they were truly doing, you'd have to believe that as children, they would choose a path that would go down and align with a satanic program. And that is not what most of these people are doing. They have been lied to and tricked into believing that this is how the world is. And they are manifesting that again and again through their anger and their hatred. If we can, Sean, our job is, those are our brothers and sisters who are hurting deeply. And I'm not saying go put yourself in front of Antifa and get your ass kicked. I'm talking about all of the people who disagree with what we're doing need us now more than ever before. That's my appeal to the Great Awakening, because if it's going to be another version of us versus them, what I'm talking about is bringing as many people over, not to the side of Trump, to the side of humanity, to remind them again of what it means to be a human being, how it feels to be a human being, because that is exactly what they're lacking. And that's what these people who are pedophiles, Sean, they know how to brainwash people because they do it to their own children. And they're doing it to all of the children of God. And what I want to say is this: how many ever we can save, I'm not talking about just through Christianity, but so that they don't descend into the violence and the hatred that has been put upon them, that they feel, that they know that there are people out there that love them. That's the point.
Well, and that's my point too, because as I've said so many times before, and I'm challenging those people, precious few of them would listen to this interview, but those who may find it and may listen to it and get through the whole thing, you're going to have to do self-reflection, and you're going to have to wake up to these truths on your own, because you can't force people to wake up. They have to want to wake up, and they have to do the research in order to wake up. That's what I found time and time again. All right, John Paul Rice has been our guest. John, before we let you go, do you want to let people know how they can find the movie? Is it still out there? Can people pay for it? How do they support you?
Anybody can find it worldwide on Vimeo on demand. If you rent or buy it, show it to as many people as you can. I'm not here to make a lot of money off of this film. I did this movie because I believed in it, and I want as many people to see it. And if you're moved by it, please do. Vimeo on demand, you can find it there. Amazon Prime worldwide in almost every English language speaking country. And if you want to find our website, you go to No Restrictions Entertainment or norestrictionsent.com. You can find all of our films and our trailers on there. And we look forward to connecting with you. We love to hear from people. We really do.
All right. Well, in a word, too, on behalf of John, guys, he had this beautiful HD camera set up, and it was a better framing and everything, and I asked him to switch it to a more SD-friendly, edit-friendly version. So in defense of you, the filmmaker, John, you had a better-looking setup than what we've actually captured on video here, so I wanted to let people know that. All right. Hey, man, thanks. I'm glad we had a chance to connect today.
Thank you so much, Sean. I really appreciate this opportunity.
No, absolutely. It's my pleasure. Guys, thank you so much. If you're still with us, please give this information a like. All right, John, thanks again for your time.
Thank you, Sean.
All right, guys, and thank you so much for tuning in. God bless you all. And for real news 24/7, please visit us directly at sgtreport.com, the antidote to corporate, mockingbird mainstream media lies. Bye-bye.
I want to suggest here that the American dream of the detached single family home, that is being erased.